Here we are, day two of projects. So I'm not going to be able to answer questions. Same deal as last time. I'm going to try and stick to the hour as quickly as possible. I'm going to tell you what I'm doing as this whole thing evolves. And I might have to turn this upside down every once in a while so that you guys can see it, because this is facing me and I would like it to be facing you. So you know what, I'm going to attempt maybe to work backwards. That might be the best bet. So let me turn this around, and yes, day two, that might be backwards for you. Day two of workshops. So same rules apply. No questions because I cannot answer them. Today is going to be more focused on composition through collage. So it's just a different way that I start my paintings, and I'm happy to walk you through the process because it's fun, it's liberating. I'm working on a big board because I am running out of art supplies, as I'm sure some of you are, so I'm going into the garage and I'm pulling stuff out. So we talked about yesterday I was going to use this tiny little picture on this great big board. So this board is 2 feet by 2 feet, and my little tiny Sebastian with his enormous backpack is probably like the size of my hand. Okay, so if we're looking at that, I'm going to try and place him so that he's walking to school. This is first day of school, so I've got to keep that in mind, because when I hang this in my house, it's got to be a little bit commemorative of what was going on. So the composition that came out of the board, I actually really like, and I don't want to cover too much of it up because I really like this distressed panel back here. Down here, obviously it could use some more fun, so I'm going to play with some of the existing material that's on there, and that will help you see that I'm not only creating new always from a panel, but I'm going to use some of what already exists. So this is some map that I cut to the right length already, and then I thought that a little bit of map collaged into the background might help us establish a bit of a different sort of composition, and I think I like that, just like that. So maybe something in between that one. I'm going to put Sebastian aside for now, because remember, I always start with subject matter. Is kind of like I sort of know what subject matter I want to use, but I don't always or I try not to start with the subject matter, with the image, because that's what, like I said yesterday, that's what animates my background. So I've got a few pieces of collage, and what I remember I talked about yesterday a little bit, you'll want to choose papers that A, fit your board because it's easier, but B, you'll also want to choose papers that have a similar feel or color, so that you're not starting from fresh all the time. And it's not that I think starting from fresh is a bad thing, I just think that for the sake of expediency, you don't always want to be starting with something new. So I am going to my little timer sheet. I'm keeping a little schedule so that I try to stay on track for you guys. But you can see that I'm ripping pieces of paper randomly, and that's what I want you to do. I just want you to rip some pieces of paper randomly, and don't discard any of them. Do some long, do some small. Just make sure that you have some random strips of paper. So I like those. And then what else have I got here? I've got some like architectural stuff with some more text. That piece is a little more challenging because of the size. And some tissue love my tissue. So I'm gonna rip some long pieces, only because my board is long. So remember that you want to tear some pieces that are going to fit the size of board you're working on. Okay, now I'm feeling like down here, I really don't like that color so much. So I think down there I might want to add something that's got a little more pizzazz. I don't know what that is yet. So maybe I'll leave it for now, and then maybe it'll come to me as the painting evolves. So let's get some big pieces laid down. So depending on your composition, if you have no clue what I'm talking about with composition, today I posted in our little tribe group in the membership, I posted my composition sheet. Actually, let me go get it, and then we'll be on the same page. Okay, so I posted this for you, and I always have like about 10 of these lying around my studio because it's really good for reminding us how to sort of self-evaluate the paintings that we're doing, because there is such good information in here, and I'll keep going over this right now. But right now what I'm doing is I'm trying to keep my scale to fit the board. But in terms of composition, I want to do what is actually a number 1 overlap. So I want to overlap things. You can see the second thing says avoid kissing. So that's when your objects just touch, right? That touches that. Nothing overlaps. And then avoid isolation. So again, that's the thing that when I always call it islands. It's when you create islands. You're like, oh, here's one thing. Here's another thing, here's another thing, and there's another thing. So there's nothing to pull it together, right, and to pull our eye through. So part of your first collage, or part of my startup, I guess, for this project, is to start with some big pieces that will overlap and cover the entire sheet of, or your entire substrate, your entire board. Now, because I'm working with big pieces, you're getting a little extra lesson here because I'm also doing large at the same time. But what I want to draw your attention to in that, there we go, is that I am going to work with large brush, large sheets of paper to get the job done quickly. And I just pre-sprayed so that the glue wouldn't all be absorbed into the paper. So here I'm going to put glue on this again. So you'll hear me say it a million times, glue likes to stick to glue. So I'm putting glue both on the paper and on the surface that I'm gluing it to. Now where I overlap, you'll see what's going to happen here. I have to put this down first, right? So I'm putting that one down first. And then I'm going to use a rewards card or something to push it down. I'm not sure I put enough glue under here or even at all. So glue likes to stick to glue. Now, the reason this is, if I forgot to put glue, the reason it was staying a little bit better is because my board's already painted. So if that was a wood surface, you would find that it wouldn't lay flat at all. It would just absorb right in. And now I'm pushing the paper down and trying to get any excess glue, which there will be, out. Okay, so now second sheet's already been glued, but what I'm going to do is I want to overlap, and I don't want this part to be visible, so I'm going to put some glue down on the board and lift that piece up. Because it's wet, that's still possible. And I'm going to slide this one underneath. And I think I want to layer something in between because I think it's a little too similar. And so I'm going to layer in that paper that we found. I like this. No, it was the other one. This is the one, I believe. There we go. Okay, so I think the piece that I ripped off may be a bit too large, actually. So I'm just going to take out a smaller piece. Remembering glue likes to stick to glue. I put glue on the back side. This is a double-sided paper from Graphic 45. So if you've never ordered from Graphic 45, they've got a lot of interesting mixed media materials. And what I like about these papers is that because they're printed on both sides, that's good. Because they're printed on both sides, they actually give you a very interesting color combination option for when you're doing layering and things like that. They have very nice graphics, obviously, if you're into a little bit more steampunk or a bit more graphic in nature. But the other thing is the paper's not thick. So a lot of times when we're working with scrapbook papers, we've got to deal with really thick paper. So I'm going to grab my knife, which I can't find right now, so I'm just going to cut this. So I never, like my little bits like that, I never throw them out. I just leave them aside because later on we might need to make a little, there, that's much better. So I'm just going to push this back down. And I don't think I have enough glue under there because I didn't do glue to glue. See, again, practice what you preach, Lovisa. So I'm going to put glue on the paper. There we go. And now glue this down. Okay. So you can see I've already got an interesting little composition happening. And the bottom, yes, it definitely needs something, but I'm going to keep referencing my little image. See, when I plop that in, it's already starting to create a bit of a composition, right? So I haven't even done anything yet, except I have my idea for my image, and now because I've decided to go with a person walking, a landscape feel really seems to suit. So because I've got this pseudo landscape feel now, I mean, I can start to think in terms of let me move that. I'm going to start to think in terms of landscape, like what's going on in the sky, what are the other elements. I printed a few more objects this morning that might potentially go into this piece. But for now, I really like this color. I like this little bit of wood showing, and I definitely like all the screw holes that are in here. So I'm thinking that I might leave some of this, my little sheet that's keeping me on time keeps falling down. There we go. Okay, so I was talking about composition. So if some of you have no clue where to start with composition, I'm going to give you a little tip, and that is one of my favorite places to start for composition is to go on to Pinterest or some places where you store images of artwork you love, okay? And from the artwork you love, take note of things like the shape of the painting. So this is square, so I'm working on square. If it's a long rectangle and you like the composition, then take note of the composition. When you look at that image, what you might be able to see, like these are all squares, but you can see that if you have one object, and you have this composition going on and it's not working, then look at art that you love and see how the pieces, how the composition is working within that piece, and then try to mimic that structure. Because I've taken many courses where the instructors will tell you that your pieces have to be, your elements have to be different, they have to be different in size, they have to be complementary in color or contrasting in color. And that's all well and done, except if you have no basis for where you're going from that, then look at art you love and dissect it first from a composition standpoint. So for me, it's easy on this one because I know what I'm taking my cue from this color, and I'm also taking my cue from the fact that little Sebastian was walking down the road. So I definitely know that this is more landscapey feel. Now, it wouldn't be a Christina Lovisa painting if it was just a plain old landscape going on. So I obviously have some things that I need to add. So let me play with a few other torn up bits of paper and just see how that looks. So if you look at this, right, if I were to put something like this up here, it kind of looks like a traffic light to me. It's a page that I made. But you know what I kind of like about this is that it's like the tones in here, the similar black and white is similar to the image down here, but it's just random enough that they could work together. What I don't like about it is that it's approximately the same size. So that I'm not so thrilled about. So I'm going to put that aside for now and take out another sheet of paper. Now this is more interesting because it's cutting my landscape a little bit, which I like. And it's also got an abstract kind of a sun feel. So you know what, I think I'm going to use this sheet and take off part of it because I'm not sure. Maybe I'll end up using that somewhere else. Yeah, that part might be interesting somewhere else. But for now, let me add this just to show you, again, how I'm building my composition. So I tend to lay down big or, depending on the size of your board, pieces of paper in random ways, and I lay them there just to see what it looks like. So that's why I always have a really good pile of paper going on beside me, because I really want to just play with this and see how it looks. And I'm able to determine if a piece will go on there or not. If I like the shape of something but not the color, I can always paint over it. I'm not bound by anything other than just playing with the pieces to see what feels right. So now the colors are complementary. Love that. This kind of gives like a bit of an illusion of a sun, which I really like. And I don't know, this little random orange bit that's going through there, that's really working for me. Now I think I want to do some paper, some paint. And then I'm going to want to deal with that bottom part sooner rather than later. So I'm going to show you how I'm going to assess this. So I'm going to put some lighter stuff. I just have some lighter papers. I'm going to put the lighter papers down there just to see how I feel about light. So I'm looking at it, it's not bad. It's a bit matchy-matchy. So let me take that out. And now let me lay down some dark paper. So I believe I have some dark pieces cut out or ripped from earlier. So let's just say we had a dark bottom. I think it's too heavy. So this is how I play with the bottom, but suddenly that gave me an idea. So you know the story of what is the story? The story of the three little bears, right? Is it the three little bears? No. Who is it that goes into the cottage? Help me out here, kids. And yeah, three little something, and then the bed's not right, and then the bed's just right, and anyway, you know that story. Clearly my brain is not working very well this morning when it comes to that sort of thing. Anyway, I had this idea that what I was creating down here was not right, and then now all of a sudden I just had the idea of what might be right. So, Goldilocks, thank you, Maria. I had to look up it because I thought it was going to drive me crazy. Goldilocks. Right, so anyway, so the light was too light, the dark was too dark, And now I just had an idea. So this is what Goldilocks would do. She would find the piece of paper that's just right. I don't have the piece of paper that's just right, so I'm going to create it. So I'm going to put that down there. It's a little short, so I'm going to take another piece. This is great, by the way, for tearing big pieces of paper, is to get yourself a square and then just line your paper up and then just tear it against the square. That way you know your pieces are somewhat straight. There we go. Goldilocks. I can't believe I forgot that one. Good grief. Okay. Now I have a little excess here, which I'm just going to trim because I don't think I need that much hanging over. Okay, so don't throw out anything. Save those bits. Save those bits. Now, glue to glue. Do you see how quickly my composition is coming together? And all I'm doing is playing with some collage. I haven't even started with paint yet. There's just a very large pile of paper beside me. And I'm just working with playing with the paper, and even just, I'm going to get him out of the way before he gets ruined. Before I've even really started planning this, I'm just going to lay pieces out, see what works, and there we go. Take a little extra because it was a little on the short side. Okay, so I'm going to add that down there. And now, remember I told you that the beauty of this paper, in my mind, one of the beauties of this paper is that, aside from it being nice and thin and pliable and easy to work with, is that it has a complementary side to it. I'm going to trim that one just against my card. There we go. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the complementary side to that paper, which is this one right here, and I'm going to put my a straight edge on it. Okay, so are we back? Yes, we are back. So tearing a few little complementary strips, and I'm going to attempt to make this piece just right at the bottom, right? Like Goldilocks would have. Okay, so little glue to glue action. I'm going to put glue everywhere. And I'm going to put glue on the strips. And I'm going to, as my husband would say, Beetlejuice it. As I Beetlejuice everything. Okay. So now I'm getting a nice little balance between the dark and the light, which before paint or anything is already starting to feel much more balanced to me. And the warmth of the paper, okay, so this is another thing that I'm kind of thinking of as I'm going. The warmth of this paper, that yellow, is the same as this dingy old paint yellow, which is on here. So coincidence or what? It's actually like, it's a beautiful complement to one another. So I'm really playing that up. I love that fact that that yellow matches that. And I shouldn't say matches, complements that. And then I'm going to use that as my, there we go, as the warmth that is necessary in contrast to black and white. So that is probably a personal opinion. So I don't want anybody like freaking out and saying, is that like how it has to be and all that? No. This is a Christina Lovisa thing. To me, black and white, as in my black and white image that I'm putting in here, I I think it looks better because it is black and white. I think it looks a little bit better if I add a bit of warmth. So to me, I always add a little bit of a creamy color in complement to a black and white because I think that it somehow creates a lovely little balance. So even though I have a lot of black and white, I have a lot of sort of grungy feel going on in this painting, or in this collage so far. That warmth, I think, is really helping this image look less like a cutout. So, what else do I want to do up here? So, thinking now it's probably time for some paint. So, let's get painting so that, I'm going to make sure let's get painting because I think that is going to pull some of this together. I'm going to throw my brush maybe just back into my glue. All right. And then remember these little bits I was talking about? I could always like save them to bring some of this out. Actually, no, it's a really nice compliment. Let's just go ahead and do that one. I can't stop collaging. Okay. It's really fun. Like, I don't know, some days I just get in background moods, and it's just only because I have such fun making backgrounds because they are just so random and they're so playful, and you just end up with such an interesting design with so little effort. And I'm all about the low effort and the return of high amount of fun. So there's a nice complement between the two, so I'm just going to leave that one. And now let's bring in some paint. So I've gone ahead and just dispensed a few chalk paints that I'm going to use. Sorry, these are not chalk paints, these are acrylic paints. There we go. Yeah, I decided not to use chalk paints because a lot of you are new and you don't have access to chalk paints. This is my way of making everybody be able to have access to the same materials. And then after the isolation and all that is over and we're able to more easily access materials, then we'll play a lot more with encaustic. And then encaustic compatible things. So I'm just randomly putting on some paint. For those of you who have like a board that doesn't actually have a background already painted, you may need more random paint than I'm doing. And I am just trying to incorporate and to soften, it's a good word. I'm picking up different colors at the same time. So I'm picking up, even though my brush has a lot of white in it, I'm just not afraid to pick up a little bit of some yellow and a little bit of this taupey color. So I do a lot with baby wipes, as you guys know. So I'm not too concerned about covering everything. I'm also not concerned about blending it, and I'm also not concerned about hiding it. If you have a, oh, there was a drop of pink in that yellow, which is kind of interesting. Maybe I'll add a bit more of that gold color. That's a neat color. So random, 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 random. So I'm going to leave some of this image because I think it's really working for this painting. And then down here, everything gets a coat of paint. Some gets more paint, some gets less paint. But as you can see, I'm not being super concerned about covering things up or planning. So remember before when I used my scratches or my scribbling as my composition, if you have a plan, meaning that you've found something, a painting that is giving you inspiration for composition, then go ahead and start masking that out. I'm doing kind of landscapey, but at the same time, the way I paint is very, aside from it being very intuitive, it's also, I need my scratches to be a me painting. So, and because I have fresh paint under here, that blade is a bit harsh. Because I have fresh paint under here, it's going to tear my paper a little bit, which is something that I always enjoy. So, a little bit of torn paper. Now, in order for me to use my baby wipes and get anything significant out of here, I have to dry up this board a little bit. So I'm also, by adding my scratching and playing with it, I'm also somewhat, I like that bit, so I'm going to glue it back down, but the opposite way. So this tore, so I'm just going to put a little glue and then put it down that way. I'm killing time here really because I'm trying to get this to dry a little bit so that it's not as wet, because if I use a baby wipe on this paint that is really, really wet, there we go, that's fun. If I do that, then what's going to happen is it's going to create just a muddy scenario. When I'm using the baby wipes, I actually want to remove the paint. I don't just want to spread it around. So that tear, I kind of went with it. It felt really like a good tear. I'm going to put that back down. And I like that a lot, especially because it tore like on this random landscape that I've got going. So, okay, so that's probably enough scratches for now, because I do need to dry this thing up. So remember I told you yesterday that you could grab a hair dryer or a heat gun. This would be a great time. I'm using an embossing gun, which is not as hot as a heat gun. And I just want to take the moisture out of the top so that when I use the baby wipes, I'm not just smearing my paint. More little bits want to come off, so let's let them come off. Another bit wants to be glued back down. There you go. These little bits with a mind of their own. My finger smearing is just to move some of this paint around to get it to dry. So if you guys are working on smaller boards like I recommended, then you're not going to have this issue of it being this wet. And you'll be able to just carry on. If you do have the opportunity to dry it a little bit, it's always recommended. Okay. I like that. Now I'm going to grab my baby wipes and I'm going to start to remove a little bit of the paint. So down here, I definitely want some of that black and white border that I created to show through. So you can see as the baby wipe gets more bogged down with paint, it just smears. That's why I buy them by the case full at Costco. There we go. Find a nice clean spot to remove paint, because a dirty spot will just keep smearing it around. I am so curious to see what you guys come up with for this, because as you can see, without the little character, right, without Sebastian walking through this painting, I have very little composition, I have very little that animates or gives life to this painting, right? Right now there's lots of paint, and there's some background like this map, and then there's this compassy thing that'll come through, which I think is kind of cool. There's a little spot of pink in that map, which is neat. Push this stuff down a little bit. Playing up on the background that's there. Actually not really concerned about revealing where this map is, because it's not of any significance to me in this painting. So if you are working with like your own maps of your own area or something like that, clearly you want to use the baby wipes more strategically to reveal things that might be more important. A lot of this paper does not want to be here, so I'm just going to remove some of it. It's funny, this one little area is really let's play with that, and there we go. It's really not wanting to cooperate at all. So I just smeared a little more glue under it. Maybe it'll want to stay. Maybe there is something more important under there that I'm totally ignoring. There we go. Okay, I just want to remind you guys while I'm talking, or while I'm doing this, that on Monday we're going to start broadcasting from within the membership. So if you pop on the live on Monday and you see that I'm not there, make sure you go into the group, and I'm going to test that over the weekend. So if I'm wrong that is not a possibility, then you'll find me back here again. What else? My classes and my courses, my whole structure for that's coming along really nicely, and I can't wait to tell you more about that. There. So this is feeling much more like a really complementary background to me, and I'm really starting to love where it's going. I want to add some more white. It just feels a little too warm. How are we doing for time? We're almost there. Good. But what we were talking about before was the structure and the composition, right? So if you are having issues wondering why your composition isn't coming together, make sure you print this off, or at least have a look at it. Make sure that your heavy objects go off the page. Make sure, like this one here, this really helped, right? Having that one little piece that goes off the page. Just look at your self-evaluation sheet, because this is going to be really important when you're not in a classroom situation where you have someone to ask. So I am going to add some more white, but I think in the meantime what I might do is I might just incorporate that piece of collage at this point so that it can dry enough. There we go. So that it can dry enough for when I want to have it. So I think I'm going to go with right there. Very scientific, right? So not in the middle, not too much on one side. I do have some other images that I printed, which I thought might be a fun addition to this. So I'll get to that in a few moments, but for now, I'm going to put Sebastian on the road. There we go. Now, to push him down, I'm going to make sure that I don't use a baby wipe. And the reason for that is that the baby wipes will take off the printing, especially because there's a little bit of glue on top. So I'm just going to use a piece of paper towel and push it down, and that will absorb any of the excess glue. that was coming out, but you can see even my fingerprint washed off on the backpack. So I'm just going to be careful with that one. That's why I wanted to seat this right away within the painting so that it wasn't, let me close this one up, there we go. I just wanted to make sure that that was in the painting before the whole thing got carried away on me. All right, so I'm going to add a bit of white to the background, and just to warm that up a little bit, but also to make it a bit more interesting to me. So that's a water-based marker. So this is the kind of thing that sometimes I accidentally add, and then when I'm showing you guys things like pores and stuff like that, if I haven't sealed that in, that's when things go a little bit awry. So let's put some color up into the top. And yeah, let's put a bit of color up here, because it's not that it's boring, it's just that it's a bit predictable. So I'm going to make color that works for me. That's a great blue that I'm mixing, but it might just be a little too strong. So do you guys remember how I toned down something that's a little too strong? I add a little dab of Big Vat of Goo. So my Big Vat of Goo is just brown yuck that is cleaned off of my brushes and everything else, with a little walnut ink in there and some water, and it always makes a really awesome brown that tends to just add a little warmth to my colors, so that my colors don't have to look as vintagey as they are. So it's a bright blue day out there, but not too bright, so we toned it down with some brown. And because I'm working upside down, it's a little more challenging for me to see, but what I don't want to do is I don't want to have the bands the same size, so I'm trying to vary that a little bit. Not sure if you guys are getting that from your perspective, but from where I am, this one looked the same as that one, and I just want to make sure that that's not the case. So now that I've got that in there, I want to distress this a little bit, so I'm going to put in some scratches, some marks, which again is just for texture, right? So if you remember, I like to create texture in layers. So this is just for a nice little layer effect, because when this dries, all those little bits are going to be torn up, and that's exactly what I'm going for. And then now I want to add I'd like to add a bit of white to the sky. Getting ahead of myself, my tongue isn't cooperating. Okay, so some white. So I'm just going to add a little bit of white right onto the painting. I can always remove it. But the whole yellow tone is just a little much for me, especially because I'm using a black and white image, right? So if this image had been a color image, then that would change the entire tone of this painting. At any point, you can go back in and add more collage. So let's say you've painted over something and you're like, oh, I think I preferred it before. Just go right back to step one and just rip out some more collage and add it back in. So you can see that these little torn bits now with a bit of paint on them create a really great texture field that once they're coated in paint and all that, you can't actually see what it is I've done with them. And to me, that part is really exciting, is having that texture that came from just, you know, being ripped up, torn up, and kind of destroyed bits of paper. So I need a heater over my painting. There we go. Okay, So, and then now I'm also thinking that the bottom, I want to warm that up a little bit. So in order to get that drying, I'm going to take a little bit of, remember that color I told you I liked way back when? Let me see if I can find it. Oh, here it is. So it's a very weird color. It's called bronze yellow, and it does look an awful lot like baby poop. Diaper full of it, but it's a really nice color in complement to black and white, and then also to any type of blues or purples. I like it a lot. Okay, so I'm gonna let that one dry a little bit because it will just smear if I get into that now. Okay, baby wipe, I'm just gonna start to blend from the bottom up, and then to get rid of some of my brush strokes. I don't mind a bit of brush stroke showing. I'm one of those people who believes that a little bit of brush stroke makes it look more authentic, makes it look handmade versus something completely machine made. Not that paintings are machine made, but you know what I mean. So revealing some of that piece of collage and blending out that white. So I could talk to you a little bit about that image. Remember last week in our collage we painted out around it, so that was important for that piece of collage, that chair that I used. But what I'm going to go ahead and encourage you to do is just to look at your own piece and self-evaluate, right? Like decide if your piece needs to be seated, like if the image needs to have that added to it, or if it was fine without it. So I don't mind that in itself, just because right now I've cut it out well, first of all, so it's nice and tight to the image, but it's also, I don't know, it's got like a bit of a cartoon feel that to me is working, and it's only because it works well with the rest of this painting. I'm going to get a bit more white in here. The white I was using was not as powerful as I would like, so I'm just going to add a bit thicker white, a titanium white. The other white that I had was a zinc white. That's feeling a little bit brighter. There we go. So yeah, if your image needs to be sat in a little bit better, go ahead and do that with the paints around, the chalk paints around, or your acrylics behind it, and have it pop out a little more. That's going to be personal preference. Like I said, in this one I'm not really thinking that it's necessary, but time will tell. I might change that afterwards. We'll see what happens. There we go. So I've got the white in here now, and that's feeling a bit brighter to me. I initially thought I was going to leave that paint, but you know what, best laid plans, right? So now that I've got that, now I'm going to see how my top is doing. So this is still a little bit wet. I'm going to dry this up. Because I really like the blue, so I don't think I'm going to baby wipe it off. I think it's nice. I just don't want it to be as heavy. So I'm going to use sandpaper. And in order to use sandpaper, I need to have it dry, or it's just going to smear everywhere. On the bottom, dry that up a little bit. Although the bottom has a nice warmth to it now, but I still want that black and white banding to show through, so I'm just going to remove some of it. But now the stain, see how the stain makes that the perfect Goldilocks piece of paper. Before it was too light, then it was too dark, then I looked down and it was too bold, and now I think we are getting closer to just right. So according to my watch, we're about 10 minutes from the end, and I don't know how your paintings are looking, but mine looks like it could use some detail work, but I'm pretty happy with the composition. I'm actually not hating it, you know? Like there's actually some really exciting parts. Woo, that just came up with the baby wipe nicely. So I don't think that that's what you want to go for in your art, not hating it, because that's not really a very good, there we go. It's not a really good thing to be striving for. You want to be striving for loving it, and it's starting to speak to me, but also some of those images that I told you I had brought in. I'm going to throw those on the floor because I have too much paper going on. Those pieces that I had brought, I think I might actually use them now. So I wanted to deal with this with a bit of sandpaper and then some paint. And then I'm going to show you what I'm talking about with animating with your image. So this is okay, but I think that it could be more. Bit of sandpaper. Has distressed this fresh paint beautifully. There. It's actually, that's really working for me. I really, really like that. So I think I'll keep that. And then maybe because you guys are always digging the polka dots. So polka dots, circles, lines, it doesn't matter what you add. I just find that it's another element of graphics that brings another layer of interest into our work. There we go. So, and if you find that you add graphics and it's a bit too much, then what I recommend is later on, when you let that dry, then you take, like the background, I could take the blue and water it down and then just do a wash, and then I get a really subtle polka dot look. Anyway, okay, so what I wanted to show you was, down in here, I think I might add something else. So I've printed off a bunch of images, because I thought maybe like a goose could follow them, but too big. Maybe a little colored goose. Then I printed them in different sizes. Definitely leaning towards the colored and definitely leaning towards that size. I have black and white. Nope, not working. Black and white. Maybe. And then I also printed some Canada geese that might be going through the sky. Not sure I'm feeling the geese, although the geese could, you see, like if I cut those geese out, they could actually fit in that black band up there quite nicely. But I think I'm going to keep all my graphics down at the bottom. It's just a feeling I have. So, now I have to decide if I want color or black and white. I think I'm going to go with color. Just feels right. So, if you have an X-Acto knife, like I was telling you before, it makes your cutting out go a little smoother. If you have the time to do that just right. I don't have the time because I've lost my glasses, as I've mentioned before. So I can't, my arms just are not long enough for me to use an X-Acto knife and cut these things out properly. So with scissors, at least I can get closer to this being sort of cut out. Now, another time, another video, we could talk about transfers, because transfers would be a much easier way for me to incorporate these images. You know, I'm going to chop the legs off because they're too finicky, and then I can always just paint them in. So there's that guy, and then I'm going to use a smaller one. Yeah, legs and feet can be painted in on such a small item without having to try and cut that out with scissors when you can't see a darn thing. There we go. Okay, so glue to glue. Let's have this little guy, which I've added way too much glue. I'll just add it to the back. I guess I'll paint in his legs. And then this little guy will be more over here. There. So now maybe what I'll do is, just so that you can see how I'm going to put legs in, I'm going to sharpen up my all pencil, and then I'm actually going to look at the image itself where I chopped the legs off. And then, because I don't need to be so precise and so perfect, I'm using the all pencil so that I can smudge it and smear it a little bit and have it look completely natural and abstract at the same time. So let's see what happens here. We'll give him a bit longer leg at the front. It's a little gimpy. There we go. It's all good. Okay, so liking that a lot. So to make it natural, spray it with water. Paper towel, pick up the water, and now I can smudge, smear, give it a bit of a shadow. Oh, that's a little trick I can show you. If you want to give things a little shadow, I'm not sure what I did with my all pencil. Here we go. But if you want to give things a little shadow without too much commitment, you can see there I just did a little bit of all pencil, and I'll get my brush wet, and I'll just put a little bit of that behind and under. A little water. So all I'm doing is I'm just kind of spreading that out a little bit, just so that there is shadow. Water. And then baby wipe from this angle, like from the outside in, will just help soften some of that. Okay, so baby wipe, clean baby wipe. There we go. I'm just going to dab and soften that shadow a little bit. And so now I've kind of animated that picture. So now the other thing that I've done by adding these geese is now I've created a bit of a story, right? Whereas before, it's not that I didn't have a story, but it just didn't have the, just gonna put some marks in here. It didn't have the grounding that it needed necessarily. So that's a water soluble marker. So all I'm doing with that is I'm adding a bit of depth so that the legs of the geese and of my little child have a bit of anchoring. There we go. Okay, so essentially this could use a bit of lines and some marks, but I'm really very happy with the overall composition. Details come in from you know, how we like to detail our work. That can be anything really. So I showed you, I put some dots, and now let me grab a different sponge, try something else. Oh, we also have stencils. So I forgot that I wanted to show you, oh, we'll save that for another day. We could add stencils in terms of, let me get one out and show you. So for composition, see I've got that circle there. If I wanted to make this more, you know, this part maybe be my focus or something like that, or maybe I want to put the focus here, I could actually just paint that out in another color. I could add a series of stencils. I use stencils a lot for shape and to bring my composition together. So actually, why don't we just do that, just so that you can see what I'm talking about. So let's put that there, and then we'll change the color on the inside of that piece. So I'm going to load up my brush with a complementary color. I'm going to use a yellow, I think. The other thing I could do is I could just put a piece of tissue over that in a circle, but I'm going to try and get a bit of a complement to the blue. So a bit yellow in that case. I have to make a yellow because I'm not totally thrilled with my options on my palette. So I don't want anything too bright. So I've added a drop of really bright yellow to my beige. So now all I'm doing is I'm pressing my stencil, and this is a super dry brush, right? Like there's no paint dripping out of here. And I'm just going over the boundaries with the yellow. So the graphic nature of the image, the black and white image, with the pop of a geometric behind it, is a really nice complement to each other. There we go. So again, really cute. Nice little addition. If I didn't like it, I take my baby wipe and I get in there and I get rid of it. What I'm actually doing is going around and just removing a bit of the color behind the face so that it doesn't look as contrived. I also might want to remove a little bit of that orange that we had up there because I thought it was really pretty. There we go. So there's a few little details that I think I might go back in and add, but essentially what I'm going to do on Monday, after I've got this all tweaked and finished and dried, I'm going to go back in and I'm going to do the faux encaustic on here. Okay, so like I said, because this was a done with acrylics, I can't go back in and do the wax on top of here because it's got too many unstable elements going on. But I am going to finish this painting up with a few little details, and then Monday hop on over to you've got all weekend to make sure that you're on our group list, right? So our group is called Open Studio with Christina. Make sure you request to be a part of that, and in that group, please, please, please post what you made today, okay? So today or till Sunday, and then now we'll be able to better follow one another. And remember that it's always kinder to say something nice, something positive about somebody's work, or say nothing at all. That is a thing that obviously we get taught when we're very young, and I believe it to be true. So if you don't like what I did, then yes. I absolutely would love to hear your questions, and I'll help you out in any way I possibly can. But if you don't like it, then just go, that's not for me. So be kind to one another. Have a wonderful weekend, everybody, and we will see you on Monday in the member group, Open Studio with Christina. Bye now.